Cooler, cloudy morning in Busan. Clear sunny skies will peak back out in the afternoon, with mercury levels hovering at 29 degrees Celsius. It's time to wrap up this hour's news. Thank you for joining. You're listening to BEFM, 부산영어방송.
Your best choice. BEFM, 부산영어방송.
Coming up next is Busan Worldwide with Stephanie Yoon. BEFM, 부산영어방송.
Busan City is gearing up for the construction of a municipal children's hospital. 부산시가 시립아동병원 건립을 본격 추진합니다. Now, a children's hospital is undeniably a fundamental requirement for creating a city that is truly favorable to raising children. The vision is to establish the municipal children's hospital, ensuring access to pediatric care without having to drive around town to find medical help for children. This is Busan Worldwide, and I'm your host, Stephanie Yoon. Good morning and welcome to Busan Worldwide. On this Friday morning, happy Friday. It is September 8th. And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to BEFM 부산영어방송. Now, let's remember, creating a city that's great for raising kids is no simple task, right? 이 아이 키우기 좋은 도시는 그냥 만들어지는 게 아니죠. It's necessary to provide high-quality job opportunities, comprehensive childcare services, and of course, a children's hospital. Right? 이 양질의 직장과 돌봄 서비스 그리고 아동병원은 필수 조건인데요. Now, just yesterday, Busan City commenced a feasibility study and planning for the construction of this children's hospital. Once the municipal children's hospital is up and running, it is expected to significantly enhance and expand pediatric healthcare services centered around this facility. Now, the planning phase will continue until April next year, and upon securing feasibility, the construction process will be expedited. In addition to the municipal children's hospital, it is crucial that we establish a system for pediatric healthcare, connecting facilities such as the ㅅThe Children's Hospital and a specialized pediatric emergency medical care as well. Well, this is great for the city of Busan indeed, right? Well, listeners, thank you again for tuning in to Busan Worldwide for Friday edition of the show. Let me briefly tell you what we have going on for the next hour. Coming up next, we have the interview, which is our main segment, of course. And today, we're going to be diving into some of the effects and positive impact that Busan World Expo 2030 would have in our city of Busan as well as nationwide. And after that, we have Up Busan 2030 and News Insight, which is our special Friday segment for the day. And as always, we are live on YouTube, so you can go to YouTube and search BEFM or 부산영어방송 and check out our studio as well as our guests in about 20 seconds, and you can send us free messages as well. Well, from Busan to the world, Busan Worldwide. 오늘의 더 인터뷰 라이브로 만나보시죠. It's now time for the interview. Busan's bid to host the 2030 World Expo, the event that's supposed to help our city take the quantum leap, is less than 3 months away. And a recent study has shown that hosting Expo will revitalize not only Busan and Gyeongnam, but also the national economy, including the capital region. It is estimated that 17 metropolitan cities and provinces, including Busan, will generate more than 50 trillion won in production and 543,000 people in employment due to the expo. Well, to talk about this and more, please welcome Mr. Ko Jong-hwan, Professor of Economics at Bukyong National University. 네, 2030 부산월드엑스포 유치 그 결정이 석 달도 채 남지 않았는데요. 최근 엑스포 부산 유치가 부산, 경남뿐만 아니라 수도권을 비롯한 전국 경제가 활성화된다는 연구 결과가 나왔습니다. 이 연구를 또 발표한 고종환 부경대 국제지역학부교수 나오셨습니다. 자세한 이야기 나눠보겠습니다. 안녕하십니까? And hello.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure having you here in the studio today to talk about something so important, especially as we wait for the 2030 World Expo decision in November. Now, when we talk about the 2030 World Expo, the focus has been on the economic impact of Busan. However, you recently put out a study that shows that the national economy will be revitalized. So tell us a bit about the background of the study.
Thank you. So, in fact, my study was funded by my university, Bukyong National University. I had 1 year sabbatical leave from September last year up to the end of August this year. So during my sabbatical leave, I did this research on the impact of the hosting of 2030 World Expo in Busan on the Korea's economy, especially on the 17 metropolitan cities and provinces in Korea. In fact, there is a previous studies done Busan city government released in 2019.
Right.
So there are some discrepancies, and also, so the study done by Busan city government focused on the impact on Busan, Gyeongnam, and the economy as a whole. But I want to look at the more detailed impact on the other metropolitan cities and provinces. That was my main purpose of my research.
I see. So this is the latest research. Like you mentioned, you just returned from your sabbatical leave.
Right.
And this is, of course, the latest research and kind of looking at how the impact, right? The impact on all 17 metropolitan cities and provinces. And we're going to hear a bit more about this research today. Now, the economic impact of the 2030 World Expo is usually said to be 61 trillion won. Do you also see it that way? And how much will the economic impact in Busan and nationwide will be?
In fact, I have also heard of the economic impact of the $61 trillion in induced production, but it's not true. It is just because of misinterpretation of the result of that investment, or the investigation. So when we talk about the economic impact of the 2030 World Expo, there are three different kinds of impact.
Okay.
One is induced production effect, induced value-added effect, and induced employment effect. So according to the research done by Busan City, as we mentioned, total impact of production is 61 trillion.
Right.
So 61 is come from the combination of two impact. One is induced production effect of 43 trillion won and 18 induced value-added effect.
Right.
But in fact, the production effect and value-added effect are different. So production effect includes the value-added effect and effect of intermediate goods.
Okay.
So let me tell you something a little bit more about the relationship between the value-added and production.
Okay.
So in order to produce goods and services, you need intermediate goods, okay, such as parts and component, and the value-added. Value-added consisting of labor and capital. So when you talk about induced production effect, this effect includes the impact on the intermediate goods, parts and components produced or induced by hosting a World Expo 2030, and also the induced value-added effect. Therefore, you should not combine these two.
Okay.
So if you combine it, then you will get a problem of so-called double counting.
Oh, so we're counting more and double counting like you
That's
mentioned.
right.
So the induced production and induced value added should not be combined.
No.
And you also mentioned that there's three kinds of effects: production, value added, and employment effects as
Right.
well. Okay, well, great to hear. I feel like this is a bit more well laid out so that we can understand a bit better. Now, I think it's interesting to hear that the region with the largest production-induced effect outside of Busan is Seoul, not the neighboring Gyeongnam province. So how did you calculate the economic impact of the expo?
Excellent question. In fact, okay, your question is one of the reasons why I want to do this research. So you see, the Gyeongnam is a neighboring region of Busan. Busan is surrounded by Gyeongnam. Therefore, so if we host the 2030 World Expo in Busan, many people expected that the Gyeongnam's economy would be affected negatively the most.
Oh.
So therefore, I did research. Is it true or not? But it was not true.
Okay.
Why? Because, okay, let me tell you first which method I use. I use the so-called inter-regional input-output model. So to use the input-output model, you need input-output table. Input-output table is compiled by the Bank of Korea. So input-output table is a table showing the relationship between input and output of all sectors in the economy.
Okay.
So input structure shows what kinds of input are necessary to produce goods and services. That is input structure. And output structure, that is distribution of goods and services. The goods and services are purchased by other sectors to be used as intermediate good for the production of goods and services. Also, the rest are consumed by private household, government expenditure for investment and exported. So as a result, so if you use the inter-regional input-output model, you can see the relationship not only between sectors of the economy, but also the relations between regions. So in case of the goods and services produced by Busan, consumed by other sectors or industry firms in other regions, other 16 regions. And also what is produced by Busan, so are purchased by other firms located in other regions and consumed by private households in other regions. Also invested for the future production in the future in other sectors. So therefore, if we use the inter-regional input-output model based on input-output table, you can see the relationship between regions. So as a result, I have found that not the Gyeongnam region, but the so-called the capital region consisting of Seoul, Incheon, Gyeonggi, is mostly affected positively.
Outside of Busan.
Outside of Busan, that's right.
I see. So we're talking about inter-regional input-output model, which is a matrix that shows the relationship between sectors of the economy. So definitely interesting to hear about it, and we can definitely learn a bit more about the expo and the impact of it as well. Then let's also talk about visitors to the expos. How many visitors will Busan see during the expo?
Right, okay, good question. So in fact, the original feasibility test on the Expo 2030, so which was done in ㅅThe. ㅅThe is a Korean Institute for Industrial Economics and Trade in 2015. Based on that, Busan city government, revised the research, and according to the recent one done by Busan city government, so around 12.76 million tourists I expect to visit Korea.
Okay.
And the 37.74 million domestic tourists will visit the site of the expo. In total, just more than 50 million people will visit the expo site.
Oh, wow. So we are expecting and estimating that we'll have over 50 million people visiting our city for the expo if we win the 2030 World Expo. And that is why we're seeing and expecting a lot of induced effect, right, that we're talking about, employment as well. Now then, let's talk about specific cost of the expo. How much will it cost to organize the expo, and what kind of economic return would we get from that?
Okay, thank you. Really good question. Why? Because that is a core point for the analysis.
Right.
So you need input to get the output. Output is impact of expo. Then, okay, there are basically four components of cost. First one is the land acquisition and compensation for it. So for that, around 30.6 trillion will be expended. In other words, so 30.6 million won will be invested in the land acquisition and compensation. Second one is site planning and construction. So altogether, 2.3 trillion won will be invested in construction. And third one is operating cost of the expo. So around 21 28.6 trillion won.
Okay.
And the final one is the cost of building pavilions. So 579 million won altogether. Total cost of the export would be 28.2 trillion won.
Wow. Okay. So we mentioned land acquisition and compensation, site planning, construction, operation of Expo, and of course, building pavilions. Altogether, a bit over 28 trillion won.
Right.
All right. All right. And so then let's talk also about the other expos around the world. Now, if we look at some of them, let's talk about 2010 Shanghai Expo, which had the largest attendance ever, as we know. So how much was invested in that, and what was the economic impact?
Thank you. This question as well. So the total cost for the 21 Shanghai Expo amounted to 5.4 trillion Korean won. So this investment had been done over 7 years.
Okay.
So finally, in total, 13 trillion won was the impact of the hosting of Shanghai Expo. So in more detail, Shanghai GLDP, gross regional domestic product, was estimated to rise 5% point, and China's GDP, gross domestic product, was estimated to rise by 2% point. So huge impact of the Shanghai Expo.
Absolutely. And I think even after the expo, we're still talking about Shanghai. And it's been, 13 years, and we're still talking about it. And that has that brand effect of it as a city as well, that hopefully Busan will experience as well. And we're talking about a lot of numbers, but definitely these are numbers that has huge impact when it comes to World Expo and as a city for the future of Busan. It's an important topic that we need to talk about. And now, listeners, if you're just joining us here at Busan Worldwide, we're in the middle of the interview with Professor Ko Jong-hwan. He is Professor of Economics at Bukyong National University, and he has done a recent study that's showing hosting Expo will revitalize not only Busan and Gyeongnam, but also the whole economy, right? National economy, including capital region. So let's continue talking about this. Now, are there any other expos that you think Busan can maybe benefit from taking into consideration?
So we remember the mainly 3 World Expo. So the Shanghai Expo held in 2010,
Okay.
Milano Expo in 2015, and Dubai Expo in 2020. Okay, next Expo will be held in Osaka, but if we're just talking about the Expo already done, so Shanghai Expo, Milano Expo, Dubai Expo, okay, they have distinguishing characteristics.
Okay.
Therefore, we cannot choose which one is the best one, but we have tried to learn something from all of the 3 expos. Therefore, we have dive into each of the 3 expos, to learn something for our export we want to have. We want to export in 2030.
Right. I know this is not included in our interview questions, but could you maybe tell us maybe one for each of the expos? That's something that we can really look into. Maybe for Shanghai, we looked at the numbers of what's invested and what are the impact. But how about Milano and Dubai? What can we learn from them?
So in fact, the Milano export, so very interestingly, so under the auspices of BIW, there is a Bureau International d'Exposition.
Yeah. Oh,
basically
great
the French.
pronunciation.
But it is International Bureau of Exhibitions.
Right.
Okay, the headquarters in Paris. So, but basically, there are 4 different types of expos, not 2. So, when we talk about World Expo is a resource expo, and the Special Expo is a recognized expo, and the Horticulture Expo. Okay, these 3 different kinds of expo are organized every 4 years.
Right.
But there is also Triennale di Milano. There is, this di Milano. Triennale Expo is organized every 3 years. So therefore, Milano Expo, which was held in 2015, is very closely related to the Triennale Milano Expo. So therefore, if we talk about the Milano, that is very special. So you see, you have to consider the characteristics of industries of individual countries. In Italy and Dubai is located in the desert area.
Right.
Therefore, there has a very unique structure of economy in terms of production, what kind of goods and services are produced and exported. Therefore, so in a very short time it is almost very difficult to talk about these characteristics. But there are distinguishing these districts. Therefore, we have to take a look at in more detail what kinds of lessons we could get from each of them.
Right, from each of them. Like you mentioned, they're all so different. And I think that's the beauty of World Expo, that we can experience it from different cities around the world that are so different. Like you mentioned, desert. But compared to Dubai, we have so many natural resources when it comes to beauty, right? The sea, the ocean, mountains, different things that we can offer. Now, we did talk a little bit about the city's brand power, but I do want to touch upon that. The economic impact from the World Expo is a given, but there are other expected effects, right, such as enhancing the city's brand power. So what are the expected effects of the Expo in your opinion?
Not only large companies, but also small and medium-sized enterprises will be able to showcase their brands, new products, and technologies. Exports are expected to increase significantly due to the advertising effect of the export, and foreign investment is expected to rise due to improved country awareness.
Right.
At the local level, so it is also expected to be a global megatrend event that will change the future economic map of Korea by globalizing the brands of local companies and forming regional-based national economic growth axis. In the short term, jobs are created in area-based construction, logistics, tourism, MICE. So I think you understand the MICE. What does it stand for? MICE stands for meetings, incentives, travel, conventions, exhibitions, and wholesale retail trade. And in the mid and to long term, regional industrial structure is expected to be created, including attracting global companies and innovating startup ecosystem.
I see. So many expected effects as we see even small and medium-sized enterprises being able to showcase their brands. You mentioned exports will increase, foreign investment will increase, jobs will increase. Just so many things that we can look forward to when it comes to 2030 World Expo. And now, in the age of globalization, where the world is connected through the internet, expos that showcase the technological ability of each country are not as effective or prestigious as they once were. So what are your thoughts on this?
It's true. But I think the hosting one, that is question. So if the VIW General Assembly to be held in the coming November, decides to award the World Expo to Busan, the Korean government, the city of Busan will make a huge investment in the World Expo, which will have a much larger economic impact on Busan and other 16 municipalities than expected.
Absolutely, I agree. And what do you think of Busan's chances of hosting the 2030 World Expo?
Busan is competing, as you know well, with Italy's Rome, Ukraine's Odell, and Saudi Arabia's Riyadh to host the 2030 World Expo. The Busan Expo 2030 Bid Committee is keen on emphasizing the importance of sustainability and solidarity under the slogan of transforming our world and navigating toward a better future. I'm quite optimistic.
Me too. I am absolutely optimistic about it, and it's very exciting. I think it's such a perfect theme, the slogan, as well as different things that they are emphasizing, like you mentioned, sustainability, eco-friendliness, and the future, right? Better world. But before we wrap up today's The Interview, lastly, on November 28th, the host city will be decided on. So what are the strategies to win the votes of the member states, of member countries of BIE during the remaining time?
As we were aware, on June 30th, our president Yoon Sung-yeol, singer Psy, soprano Sumi Jo, and the other artists, as well as CEOs of big companies of Korea, made a very impressive World Expo bid at the BIW General Assembly in Paris. I think and hope that if all citizens of Korea and Busan, as a private diplomat, work together on various levels to attract the World Expo, along with the government's diplomatic efforts to the 179 member countries of BIE, will surely attract the World Expo to Busan.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. And with that, we're going to have to wrap up today's The Interview with Mr. Ko Jong-hwan. He's a professor of economics at Bukyong National University. We had this opportunity to check out his recent study that has shown that hosting Expo will revitalize the whole region as well as the whole nation and national economy, including the capital region. We talked about different effects, right? Induced impact and different things like job creation, future investment, as well as different things. So definitely a great opportunity to see the future of Busan if we win the bid for the 2030 World Expo. 네, 오늘은 고종환 부경대 국제지역학부 교수와 함께 자세한 이야기 나눠봤는데요. 교수님 오늘 출연 감사합니다. Thank you so much.
Thank you again so much for having me.
It was our pleasure. Now the time is 11:30 and we're going to take a quick song break. This is Electric by Katy Perry.
Electric. In the dark when you feel lost, wanna be the best but at what cost? If you're gonna stay here, nothing's ever changing. No big world, gotta see it all. Gotta get up even when you fall. There's no point in waiting. No. They'll try to bring you down, but you've got the power now. I know you feel it. If you believe it, then you can. There's no reason that this life can be electric. Oh, I can see it, see it. If you believe it, then you can. There's no reason that this life can be electric. Yeah. Long road, got a ways to go. Take a big step, but you're not alone. Cause we got each other. There's so much you discover. Headstrong, but your heart is stronger. Stay calm, walking through the fire. I know you're gonna make it out. They'll try to bring you down, but you've got the power now. I know you feel it, feel it. If you believe it, then you can. There's no reason that this life can be electric. Oh, I can see it, see it. If you believe it, then you can. There's no reason that this life can
welcome back to Busan Worldwide. I'm your host, Stephanie Yoon. The time is now 11:33, and before we move on, I want to read one message from 인류의 충전소님 saying fingers crossed for the expo. I was trying to really cross my fingers, but it's really difficult. Now, let's jump into Up Busan 2030. It's a daily campaign segment in Busan Worldwide to learn more about World Expo until November, because that's when the host city for the 2030 World Expo will be decided on. So let's dive right into it. Busan Port Authority has kicked off the 2030 Busan World Expo Bid Wishing Social Media Challenge. 네, 부산 항만공사가 2030 부산 세계박람회 개최 기원 부산항 소셜미디어 SNS 챌린지를 시작했습니다. Executives and representatives from Busan Port Authority were seen holding banners with slogans like Busan Port supports the 2030 Busan World Expo as they took photos and posted them on their social media accounts. This challenge is inspired by the fact that Busan Port will play a central role as a main stage for the 2030 Busan World Expo, and it's an initiative by Busan Port Authority, BPA, to rally support from the maritime logistics community and promote Busan Port. It will run until the end of November with the announcement of the Expo's host city scheduled, and the challenge will continue in a relay format, which is very interesting, with the first participating organization nominating the next participant. Busan Port Authority has designated the Busan Regional Maritime Affairs and Fisheries Office and the Busan Port and Harbor Logistics Association as the next participants in the social media challenge. The organizations nominated for the challenge will in turn nominated two other participating organizations each, and through this social media challenge, it's hoped that many citizens and organizations will express their support and hope for hosting the 2030 World Expo here in Busan. Well, that's it for the Busan World Expo Daily campaign here on Busan Worldwide, but we're going to move on to the Daily Expo Quiz. Now, if you're a regular listener to Busan Worldwide, the number 1851, right, 1851 might ring a bell. And that's because it marks the beginning of World Expos. And it all began in London's Hyde Park. Back in 1851, during the heyday of the Industrial Revolution, the UK, United Kingdom, eager to showcase its technological ability, hosted the great exhibition of the works of industry of all nations, better known as the 1851 World's Fair or World Expo. The event in London generated quite a bit of buzz for various reasons, but the centerpiece was the colossal exhibition hall known as the Crystal Palace. This architectural marvel was 563 meters long, 124 meters wide, large enough to fit 18 soccer fields. So, here's the question for today. 엑스포 관련 문제 드리겠습니다. Who was the mastermind behind the design of this monumental structure, the Crystal Palace? 네, 런던 만국 박람회의 최고의 화제는 수정궁이었는데요. 이 수정궁을 설계한 사람은 누구일까요? The answer is Joseph Paxton. He was the mastermind behind the design of this monumental structure, the Crystal Palace. 네, 정답은 바로 조셉 팩스톤입니다. Now, he was a leading architect of his time, devised a groundbreaking approach. Instead of traditional materials like stone and brick, he actually used cast iron columns to support the building, while the walls and roof were all made entirely of glass. This innovative design met the criteria of constructing a simple and cost-effective building as quickly as possible. And there was actually massive giant sequoia tree on the expo ground at the time, and Londoners opposed its removal. So the Crystal Palace was built on a grand scale to accommodate this grand tree in the middle, which found a home within the structure. And that was a glimpse into the fascinating beginning of World Expos. And I'm going to miss learning about expos every single day, because after November, we're probably going to focus on just Busan and Busan World Expo. And that's it for Up Busan 2030, a daily campaign for the World Expo. We will continue this segment until November. With that, let's take a quick song break. This is Dancing with Nobody by Austin Mahone.
I like the way, oh, that you talk to me. Yeah. I like the way, oh, that you scream my name, baby. I don't know how, but I know you're the one. I'm standing my ground now when I used to run. It feels like a dream, but I know that I'm up all night with you. I don't feel like dancing with nobody else. It don't feel romantic with nobody else. Can't you see that, baby? I don't want nobody else but you. I don't feel like dancing with nobody else. It don't feel romantic with nobody else. Can't you see that, baby? I don't want nobody else but you. I like the way you breathe when you're close to me. Ooh, yeah. I like the way your hair falls across your face. Yeah. I don't know how, but I know you're the one. I'm standing my ground now when I used to run. It feels like a dream, but I know that I'm up all night with you. I don't feel like dancing with nobody else. It don't feel romantic with nobody else. No, no. Can't you see that, baby? I don't want nobody else but you. I don't feel like dancing with nobody else. It don't feel romantic with nobody else. Can't you see that, baby? I don't want nobody else but you. No, I can't help it. I want some more. Somehow I know that you won't let go. I don't know better. I lose control. I think I might love you. I like the way, oh, that you talk to me, girl. Ooh, I like the way you keep me up. I'm up all night with you. I don't feel like dancing with nobody else. I don't feel like it don't feel romantic with nobody else. No, no, no. Can't you see that, baby? I don't want nobody else but you. I don't feel like dancing with nobody else. I don't feel like it don't feel romantic, baby. No, no. Can't you see that, baby? I don't want nobody else but you.
Beyond the borders of Busan, bringing the world back to you. Busan Worldwide with Stephanie Yoon.
변은샘 기자의 News Insight. That's right, it's time for News Insight with our reporter, Miss 변은샘. And she is from 부산일보, coming here every Friday, right, for our special segment to tell us what's going on here in Busan. 기자님, 안녕하십니까?
안녕하세요.
네, 반갑습니다. Now, today we actually have a very unfortunate and serious topic here in the studio. Now, we're going to be talking about how in Busan, a shocking incident unfolded where a student seeking part-time employment was pressured into prostitution, ultimately leading to her decision to end her life. So today we bring you the details of this unfortunate event. 부산에서 아르바이트를 찾던 수험생이 성매매를 권유받고 결국 극단적인 선택까지 하는 충격적인 일이 벌어졌다고 하죠. 오늘은 이 내용 알아보겠습니다.
네, 지난 4월에 벌어진 일입니다. 재수생이었던 학생이 용돈을 벌려고 아르바이트를 지원했다가 성폭력을 당하는 일이 벌어진 건데요. 구인 면접을 가장해서 변종 성매매 알선이 이루어졌고 결국 성폭력 사건까지 이루어졌습니다. 19살이었던 피해자는 이날의 충격으로 고민을 하다가 한 달이 채 지나지 않은 시점에 극단적인 선택을 했다고 전해졌습니다.
네, 정말 안타깝습니다. Now, this incident occurred back in April and involved a student studying to get into college who attempted to earn some extra allowance through part-time work. After attending a job interview, she was lured into a world of sexual exploitation, leading to a sexual assault as well. And the victim, a 19-year-old student, was deeply affected by this shocking event and tragically took her own life less than a month later. We're gonna hear a bit more about this through today's segment. 이 어떤 일자리로 알고 학생이 구인 면접에 나간 거죠?
예, 당초 피해자는 스터디 카페 일자리를 지원했습니다. 용돈 같은 이제 가족의 경제적 부담을 덜고 싶어서 아르바이트 구직 사이트에 이력서를 올렸는데요. 스터디 카페 관계자라고 주장한 가해자 A씨가 피해자에게 접근했다고 합니다. 실제로 스터디 카페에서 면접까지 이루어졌는데 이때 A씨는 더 쉽고 더 좋은 일이 있다라며 키스방 아르바이트를 권유했다고 합니다.
I see. So initially, the victim applied for a position at a study cafe for her part-time job in order to alleviate her family's financial burden. She uploaded her resume to a job search website where she was contacted by an individual claiming to represent the study cafe. This person, we'll call him as Mr. A, conducted an interview at the cafe and a study cafe, and during this interview, he shared to the victim with the promises of easier and better opportunities, leading her to consider working at what's called 키스방, which literally translates to kiss room where sexual acts are done with payment. 그럼 성폭행은 이후 이뤄진 일인가요?
네, 이렇게 면접을 진행한 이후에 A씨는 피해자를 바로 스터디 카페 인근에 있던 키스방에 데려갔습니다. 여기서 실습을 해보겠다면서 성폭행을 한 것으로 전해졌는데요. 그러니까 애초 스터디 카페 면접의 목적이 처음부터 변종 성매매 권유였던 셈입니다.
그렇군요. So following the interview, Mr. A immediately took the victim to a nearby kiss room where she was subjected to sexual assault. So the purpose of the initial interview at the study cafe was, from the outset, to lure the victim into the world of prostitution or sexual exploitation. Now, how did this incident come to light? 정말 충격이 큰데요. 이 사건이 어떻게 알려지게 된 건가요?
피해자는 사건 이후에 가까운 일부 친구들에게만 이런 일을 털어놓았다고 알려졌습니다. 유족들은 피해자가 스스로 목숨을 끊은 이후에야 이런 사건이 있었다는 걸 알게 됐고 이 내용을 바탕으로 고소를 했습니다. 그러면서 이제 경찰이 본격적인 수사에 착수하게 된 겁니다.
I see. So after the incident, the victim confided in a few close friends, and it was only after the victim tragically took her own life that her family became aware of the horrifying experience. Based on this information, they filed a formal complaint to the police, leading to a comprehensive investigation. 그럼 이런 사건이 처음 있었던 일인가요?
이번 사건을 파헤치는 과정에서 다른 피해자들도 여럿 있다는 정황이 속속 나오고 있는 상황입니다. 문제가 됐던 스터디 카페 관계자는 A씨가 예전부터 젊은 여자 손님들과 이곳을 자주 찾았다고 증언하기도 했는데요. 그러니까 이번 사건이 처음이 아니라 같은 수법으로 장기간에 거쳐서 다수의 초년생들에게 접근하기도 했다는 겁니다.
그렇군요. So with the investigation, evidence suggests that there may be other victims who have fallen prey to similar tactics. Witnesses have come forward asserting that Mr. A had been frequenting this study cafe and approaching young women for an extended period. And this leads us to believe that this incident may not be an isolated case, but part of a pattern of exploiting recent graduates. 이 가해자 A씨는 지금 수사가 진행 중인가요?
네, 경찰은 사건 피해자의 통신 기록, 지인 증언 등을 통해서 A씨의 성매매 알선과 성폭행 혐의를 입증하려고 하고 있습니다. 일단 A씨는 경찰 수사를 거쳐서 검찰에까지 넘겨졌고요. 안타까운 점은 피해자가 지금 직접 증언을 할 수 없는 상태이다 보니까 물리력 행사나 협박 같은 행위들을 법률적으로 입증하기는 어렵다는 점입니다. 그래서 경찰도 강간 혐의 적용은 하지 못했고요. 업무상 위력에 의한 성매매 알선, 직업안정법 위반 등 혐의를 적용했습니다. 음란한 행위가 이루어지는 업무에 취업을 시킬 목적으로 근로자 모집을 했다는 점을 바탕으로 직업안정법 위반 혐의를 적용한 겁니다.
그렇군요. So the police are working to gather evidence against Mr. A, focusing on phone records and testimonies from acquaintances to substantiate charges of prostitution and sexual assault. Mr. A has already been transferred to the prosecutor's office. Unfortunately, due to the victim's tragic passing, it is challenging to legally establish and prove that cases of physical coercion or threats, making it difficult for the police to charge Mr. A with rape. Instead, they have applied charges related to solicitation of prostitution, violation of employment stability laws, and the recruitment of employees for the purpose of engaging in sexual activities. Now, the grief of the victim's family is unimaginable. So, is there a reason they chose to make this incident public? 유족의 심정이 어떨지 상상이 안 되는데요. 유족이 이렇게 사건을 알리게 된 이유가 있다고 하죠?
네, 그렇습니다. 피해자는 성실하게 학교 생활을 하던 학생이라고 알려졌는데요. 재수를 선택하게 되면서 이제 가족이 경제적인 부담을 조금이라도 덜어보려고 아르바이트를 구했다고 합니다. 그 와중에 이런 사건이 생겼다 보니까 유족들의 안타까움이 더해지고 있는 건데요. 피해자 유족은 지금 드러난 피해자 한 건의 사건 말고도 더 많은 피해자들이 있을 것으로 보고 이제는 이런 유사 수법으로 피해를 겪는 사회초년생들이 없길 바라는 마음에서 사건을 공론화했다고 밝혔습니다.
그렇군요. So the victim was a dedicated student who sought part-time employment to alleviate the financial burden on her family while pursuing her academic goals. In light of this tragedy, her family believes that there may be other victims of similar exploitation tactics, and their hope is that by bringing this incident to public attention, they can prevent other young individuals from falling victims to such crimes. Now, what's even more concerning is that experts suggest that this variant of sex trafficking or these type of, sexual exploitation is not an isolated case, but a deeply ingrained problem. So let's hear a bit about this. 정말 안타까운 일인데요. 더 심각한 문제는 이번 사건이 특이 사례가 아니라 이런 변종 성매매 수법이 만연해 있어서라고 하던데요.
네, 맞습니다. 전문가들은 청소년이나 여성이 많이 이용하는 아르바이트 사이트를 통한 성매매 알선은 이미 오래된 문제라고 지적을 해왔습니다. 결국 이런 변종 성매매의 구인 수법이 공개적으로 드러나 있는데도 오랫동안 방치되어 온 것이 이번 비극을 낳은 것으로 보입니다.
I see. So experts have pointed out that the solicitation of prostitution through part-time job websites, particularly targeting teenagers and young women, has been an ongoing issue. Now, this incident tragically appears to be the result of the continued prevalence of these exploitative practices, despite being brought to light in the past. Well, with that, let's summarize today's topic and today's article and stories and wrap up a bit. 네, 오늘 내용 정리하고 마무리할게요.
네, 아르바이트를 찾던 10대 여성이 스터디 카페 일자리로 알고 나갔다가 변종 성매매를 권유받고 성폭행을 당하는 충격적인 사건이 부산에서 벌어졌습니다. 피해자는 사건 한 달 만에 스스로 목숨을 끊었는데요. 그 피해자는 평범한 재수생으로 알려진 상황입니다. 가족의 경제적 부담을 덜고자 아르바이트를 구해보려다가 생긴 일이라서 안타까움은 더욱 커지고 있습니다. 이런 유사수법에 당한 피해자들은 더 많을 것으로 경찰은 추정을 하고 있는데 그동안 공개적으로 만연했던 변종 성매매 수법이 너무 오랜 기간 방치되다 보니 이런 비극적인 사건까지 일어난 것 같습니다. 이번 사건을 계기로 제대로 구인구직 사이트를 감시하는 체계가 갖춰져서 더는 사회초년생들을 절망하게 하는 이런 사건이 생겨서는 안 될 것 같습니다.
네, 맞습니다. So she shared that in a shocking incident that unfolded in Busan, a young student who was in search of part-time employment at a study cafe was offered to be involved in prostitution and was sexually assaulted. Tragically, just one after the incident, the victim took her own life, and the victim, known as an ordinary student, dedicated student preparing to get into colleges, had taken up the job-seeking work in an attempt to alleviate her family's financial burdens. Police estimate that there may be more victims who have fallen prey to similar tactics, and the fact that these methods of sexual exploitation have been allowed to persist unchecked for an extended period appears to have ended in such a tragic incident. It is important that in the wake of this event, a system of monitoring job-seeking websites is established to prevent further occurrences of such incidents that could lead to despair among young individuals starting their careers in the future. Well, that's going to do it for today's News Insight with our reporter, Miss 변은샘. And we're going to say goodbye to her today. 네, 기자님, 오늘 소식은 여기까지 듣겠습니다. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
Right. And that's going to do it for today's News Insight. This is a special segment that we have for you every Friday, focusing on what's going on here in our city of Busan. But what we talk about here, I believe, reflects the whole nation many times. So this is definitely an unfortunate story that we talked about, but something that we definitely need to shine a light on and talk about here in our show. The time is now 11:53. We do have to wrap up pretty soon, but we will be back tomorrow with all the highlights of the interviews from this week, Monday through Friday. So tune in for that at 11 a.m. And before we wrap up, I do want to just check out a couple messages. On YouTube, we have Humberto Mendoza-nim just saying hello, happy Friday, TGIF, hello Stephanie. And also 일류의 충전소님 saying silver teacher. I think he's talking about 변은샘 as silver teacher. I love that. Next week, we're going to make sure that we call her silver teacher. Very cute nickname that you have for us. If you have any other nicknames you want to give to maybe our producer as well, let us know. Well, we're going to have to wrap up. This program was produced by Tina Park, written by Pang Mira. I've been your host, Stephanie Yoon, and the final song for today is The Weeknd with Save Your Tears. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
I saw you dancing in a crowded room. You look so happy when I'm not with you. But then you saw me, caught you by surprise. A single teardrop falling from your eye. I don't know why I run away. I'll make you cry when I run away. You could have asked me why I broke your heart. You could have told me that you fell apart. But you walked past me like I wasn't there, and just pretended like you didn't care. I don't know why I run away. I'll make you cry when I run away. Take me back, 'cause I wanna stay. Save your tears for another. Save your tears for another day. Save your tears for another day. So, I made you think that I would always stay. I said some things that I should never say. Yeah, I broke your heart like someone did to mine. And now you won't love me for a second time. I don't know why I run away. Oh girl, I make you cry when I run away. Girl, take me back.
Hi, I'm Roberto Fernandez from Mallorca, Spain. I have been living here in Busan for more than 5 years with my Korean wife and
Better